1 minute. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Can you guys hear me now? Can you guys hear me now? Okay, that's good. All right, so we're going to take it from the top. All right, so tonight is a special show. Tonight is, you notice that I do not have a guest with me on the show tonight. Tonight is just about me talking to the audience. You know, I've been hearing a lot of, I've been getting a lot of questions in my inbox. You know, when I see people, a lot of people been asking me questions. So I'm going to try to address some of the questions that have been asked. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to call in tonight. So I want to give a shout out to Sandra. Look, Sandra, how you doing, Miss Wilkes? I am so surprised to see you on tonight. And you guys make sure you like and share this post. But one of the questions that a lot of people ask me is, why did I start this podcast, or why did I start this show? And it wasn't something that I ever looked into just doing. It wasn't like I woke up and said, yes, I want to do a show. No, I kind of walked into it. I remember a girlfriend of mine and I used to have a shop in Temple Hills. It had an upper level and it had a lower level. And something crazy transpired and the upper level got emptied out. Long story short. So when we emptied that out, I mean, I wasn't going to lose. I had already signed a lease on that place. It was expensive. So I said, we're going to do something up here. So a friend of mine, she, was ambitious, and she just said that she wanted to start doing some things, And I said, well, you know what? I'm going to call your bluff. Let's see what you can do in the event upstairs. And long story short, we started doing these events with people coming. We would kind of serve dinner. We were served in wine and things like that. And it started to be so many people, and people were talking about their issues so much that, I mean, we would be there until midnight sometimes, just trying to listen to people's problems and give the best advice we could. So long story short, that's kind of how I got started with this. And it's just been going on and on since. I rarely have to look for guests. I may put out things on social media, but most of the time people inbox me with some kind of problem that they feel like needs to be addressed. And that's how we get the topics for the shows. That's that. So, it is a sacrifice doing the show. I don't know if you guys have ever even tried to make a live video, but it is very interesting. I do a show each and every Monday, and I do not like to pre-record my shows. I like to sit with my guests, and I'm always live. When you see it, I like to sit here and talk to you guys face to face. It's nothing pre-recorded. It's all authentic. If any mistakes I made, they right here on camera. So that's that. Another question that I get a lot is, questions about my dating life. A lot of people ask me, who am I dating? What kind of man am I looking to date? Do I want to be married? Just a lot of things like that. I'm good. I date. I don't mind dating, but I am very, very particular with the people that I date. I am very private. When I do date people, you'll never see me put things on social media with me and the guys that I date, because to be honest with you, when you're dating, you saying what's going on. A lot of people get too serious too fast. I've learned that from experience. So when you're dating somebody, you getting to know who this person is. You getting to know how they are and their character. And for me and, where I'm going in my life, I feel like it's a wise decision to keep my love life private, just in case something doesn't work out. Now, if I get engaged, then you guys will probably hear about it then. But as far as going out to dinner and things like that, he not battle tested yet. He not approved until it's a ring involved. That's that. A lot of people ask me, do I have children or do I want children? I do not have children. I have one godchild and I love him dearly. And I do not have children of my own, and I do not think I want children of my own. I'm kind of good on that. I'm all right on having kids. I've never been the type of woman that was just like, oh, I can't wait to be a mom. I don't know if God wired me like that because he knew my commitment to the business and how I felt about making money. You can do those things if you're a mom too. But I don't think I ever really made the time to make kids. I've always been on my grind. I've always been a really hard worker. I remember in the first 10 years of my hair career, I think I worked 7 days a week the entire time. If I didn't go to work, it was because I was sick or out of town. Yep. So no, I do not want children. When I feel like I want a child, I'll go call my godson. He lives out of state. but I'll call him or call my nieces and nephews. It's enough of them. All right. Now, another question that people ask me is, and I mean a lot of people, men, ask me this: why am I so money hungry? Now that was a hilarious question. It was kind of funny to me because I had to think. I went back and looked at some of the old shows, and my responses when people ask me, when men ask me about who I was willing to date. I don't know if you guys caught this show, but it was an old show. And not long ago, about a month or so ago, and one of the guys asked me, would I date a guy if he was sitting at a bus stop? And I said, absolutely not. So my answer is still the same, but I just want to take some time to kind of break it down. Yeah, because I meant what I said. I have had my share in dating of compromising my standards. I don't feel like a woman is money hungry because she requires a certain level. Now, it may be a 1 in a million chance that, ladies, you meet a guy and he's really a good, ambitious man that's really just going through a storm in his life, and he may not be financially stable. And even on that, he probably needs to get through that storm first. You know what I mean? I could be his friend, but ultimately, if a guy doesn't have a vehicle, I'm probably not going to date him. It's just not going to happen. And like I said, it is levels to things. I'm almost 40 years old. If a man doesn't have enough money to get himself a vehicle, the odds of him having enough money to provide a home for us or him being interested in marriage is real slim. So you got to know what you want, ladies, and don't compromise on that. I don't care if people call me money hungry. I mean that. I like people that grind. Whoever I date, he's going to have to be a grinder because I work crazy, and it is a balance. Money is not money is not everything, but money is important. And I have always, anybody that knows me knows that since I've been 12 or 13 years old, I've always been a very driven person. I've always worked hard because I didn't want to go without. I grew up in Southeast, and this is so funny. I remember in my house, right? Just to give you a picture of how I grew up, in my house, it wasn't even a 2-bedroom. My father raised me. He made the living room his bedroom. And I kind of hated that. When I would go over to visit family that had houses and more privacy and things like that, I always knew that I wanted more. I appreciated it, but I knew that I wanted something different. I always knew that. And I knew that I needed money to get it. And growing up in Southeast, we about to get real 100 up in here. A lot of women that I knew that was from the hood, used to sleep with men for money or to get ahead. That wasn't uncommon, and even when I was young, I used to walk home. We didn't have school buses in Southeast. So when I would walk home and walk to school on that journey back and forth, I came across quite a few perverts. It was a lot of guys that didn't care how old you were. They was willing to sleep with you to they ain't care. They wanted to sleep with you and they would give you money. You know what I'm saying? And I saw a lot of my friends, succumb to things like that. But I never was comfortable with that. Now, I will be honest, since we said we're going to lay it on the table tonight. And this is funny. I want to address this question right here. It doesn't matter if I'm in New York City. That is different. In New York City, you may not need a car. Y'all know it's always somebody being sarcastic. So as far as a man needing a car in New York, no. As long as he could take me out to dinner, we'll be good. There's no need to have a car in New York. But that's so funny. But back to the Southeast thing, a lot like the question was, why am I so money hungry? It's not that I'm money hungry. I never wanted to be in a position where I had to sleep with a man for some money. I just could not run that. And I will be honest, it was times when, because my dad raised me by himself. So it's me and dad, So my father worked a lot. So I had a lot of time to roam around in the streets. And it was a lot of times when, I didn't have money for the things that I wanted. My father was a good provider, but I wanted different things. I wanted certain things, like clothes or to be able to buy more at the mall, just a typical teenager. And being around drug dealers, older guys that was offering you that kind of money, I did find myself in situations sometimes that made me feel uncomfortable. You see it on movies and stuff like that, but you might get somebody that pulls up. I had one guy, I'm not gonna say his name, of course, and he was really known in our hood, and he had this nice old school Cadillac, but he had all that money, but he still was a pervert. Like, he was messing with underage girls. Like, he had no reason to be barking up my tree. But after a while, I find myself up in his vehicle. You know what I mean? And when I was in that vehicle, I didn't like the way he made me feel. That hand tried to go some places it shouldn't have went and things like that. And I said, this not for me. This not never what I'm going to be doing. And, with my mom, I love my mother, but my mother was kind of out there, and I saw her. I don't want to disrespect my mom. She passed away, but this is the truth. I saw my mother doing things that I would never want a child to see their mother doing with men. And that is easy to plant things in your mind. But God always gave me a mind. Like, I always knew better, even though I didn't see better. I knew. I said, that is not the way it's supposed to go. You know what I mean? And I'm never gonna have to do nothing like that for no man. So long story short, that's the way that goes. I don't want to write a book in here tonight about that. Well, I'll move on to the next question. And you guys, like I said, if you guys have questions, the number is on the screen. You guys call it. But okay, another question. Let me see. What question do I want to take next? Some people that I went to high school with inboxed me and asked me what made me change my lifestyle. To know me now, and a lot of us change as we grow, but I think I made a significant turnaround when I was in high school, and the way I am now. Sometimes I'm a little ashamed of the things and how I operated then. I might run into somebody now that hasn't seen me in years, and they may say something like, "Hey, Ro, what's up?" This is a true story. I ran into somebody at the mall, and, he was like, "Hey, Ro, it's good to see you. How you been? Blah, blah, blah." And he had some friends with him, and he turned to his friends and was like, "Man, I love her. She 100. He was like, "She the first person that told me how to bag up." And, when I say bag up, I mean bag up drugs, and where I am now in life, it kind of like made me, it turned my smile upside down, because you plant seeds throughout your life. And, you just want to plant good seeds, because whatever you plant, it normally grows. And, I looked at where he was, and unlike myself, he was still in the street. He was still selling drugs. It was clear. And I felt bad because, I was the person that introduced him to that. It's not my fault that he's still making that move, but it just put something on my mind, So for me, changing had a lot to do with, I'm going to be honest, God. Like, I remember I was high as the sky. I used to live over in Landover. across from Landover Mall, and y'all might know it as the old Village in the Woods. I think it's called Maple Ridge now, but I'm telling you, I think I sat on that couch for about 10 years, high as the sky. I went to work, came home, got high, and either went to the bar or went to sleep. And that's just what I did. I wasn't thinking about doing any more than what I needed. I worked, I saved my money, but I just used to be high and drunk all the time. And I remember, I'm gonna be honest, one night I was about to call a guy over because I wanted some company, some late night company. And when I picked up the phone, I heard a voice, and it was crazy. This is a true story. And it was like, when you pick up your phone, somehow it was like on my internet when I picked up the phone, and it was like something on there that said, I have great plans for you. And if you ever heard God talk to you, like, it's no question. You don't have to go to church every Sunday, none of that. You don't have to be no pastor, no minister to hear from God. And I know good and well, I was high and drunk as all outdoors that night. But I heard it loud and clear. And when I heard that, it changed me. It's true. Some people have encounters with God, and it changes you. And for me, it changed me almost instantly. When I heard God say that, I just felt like I was in a hole. I felt like I was just in a dark space. I wasn't really thinking about the things that I was capable of. It just wasn't even an option. I lived in the hood. I was from the hood. And I like smoking weed and getting drunk. That's just what it was. I didn't think I was going to be, anybody's wife one day. I didn't think that I was going to own my own business. It didn't even cross my mind, because me working in somebody else's shop, and making money and paying my rent, to me, that was doing great. That was like ambition right there. So, when I heard God tell me that he had plans for me, I looked up and I said, off the back, I said, all right, well, show me. And that's when it all started. I think within 1 year's time, my life completely turned around. Everything just changed. So when people ask what that change was about, it started with that call, I just believed God and what he said, and I just gave him a chance. I was like, all right, if you God, then be my God. And I started just shedding bad habits. He made me just start to dislike things that I used to do. Like, I couldn't, I'm sorry, y'all, I'm going to these comments. Besides the salon, do you have any other businesses? You know what? I do the salons, and I do this right here. I do the show, and I'm also I serve on the ministerial staff at my church. I'm a minister as well. But no, that's it. That takes up all my time. I have 3 hair salons. That's a lot, and I do life coaching, but honestly, that falls under the umbrella of the salon. When you do people's hair, when you go see your barber and your hairstylist, that's counseling. That's counseling right there. But sometimes I do service people in my office. If people need to come in for a session, I don't mind that, or do a Zoom call. That's that. But yeah, when you I just started to dislike myself. I used to think it was so cute to go hard and be fighting. And, my demeanor was so bad. I was so mean to people. I can be a tough cookie in business, but, I'm a lot sweeter. I'm a lot nicer. I smile a lot more now. I think for that 10 years I was in that apartment, I had to be drunk to laugh. I had to be high to even deal with life. I tell people, if you high all the time, it's just like you on medication. I don't knock it if that's what you want to do, but it's like being on meds. That's what you take. That's what you're doing it for. If you get high all day, every day, you just constantly high, you trying to numb something. You know, if you drunk all the time, you trying to numb something. But when God said that to me that night, you know, I just stopped liking things. I can't even take the credit for the change that I made. I really gotta say that God did it, because people that say they didn't like their old lifestyle when they was in the streets and stuff like that is kind of a lie to me, because I had a good time. You know what I'm saying? I went home, I was high, we would drink, and man, we would laugh. When I had company, I had some of the best parties and things like that. You know, it was a good time. You know, when I stopped drinking and smoking, I had to start really dealing with life and giving attention to issues that wasn't numb anymore. So, you know, that's just that. All right. Let me go to the comments. Khadijah Gang said, that's my best friend. She said, your obedience saved a lot of lives. Oh my goodness. Thanks, best friend. Well, you was there for the whole thing. So, you know, if anybody think it's a lie, it's witnesses. You know, I remember we would go out. I had lost my mind. It's amazing that I'm not dead, because I put myself in some real situations to get killed. I remember, man, one time, you know, a friend of mine, it wasn't even my boyfriend. Her boyfriend cheated on her, and we found out where they were. And we went to these people's house at 2:00 in the morning, man. Had somebody in the back seat with us with a piece. And we was ready to shoot that house up. Like, I stood in the middle of the street asking these people to come outside at 2:00 in the morning. And we in the middle of the hood. This a house full of, it's dudes, whatever up in there. And I know they had some toys up in there. And I was just, oh Lord. I mean, fighting, bar fights. To this day, you know, it's places that we can't even go back to, because that's how bad we turned it out. I hear people say they was in the streets and things like that, and they used to be a certain way, but I really used to be a certain way. It was horrible, man. It was so bad that when people see me now, as soon as I say hi, they already know something is different. Yeah, that's that. Yeah. All right. So what's another question that people ask, because I know I'm not going to have time to answer them all. Okay. A lot of people ask me, do I believe in, since I'm a minister and people ask me about dating, a lot of guys that inbox me, or a lot of guys that I meet, I try to get around telling people that I'm a minister, but at some point it comes out, because people see my commitment to things at church and things like that. And people ask, do I believe in sex before marriage? Okay. I believe it is wrong. I do not believe God is happy that has sex. I mean, for us to have sex before marriage. It's just no getting around that. I can't practice some of the Bible and not all of it. Now, do people make mistakes? Yes. Do that mean, you know, if somebody is having sex before marriage, that they can't go forward and get married and have a successful marriage? No, it happens. But for me, you know, I can't do what I used to do. I remember when I was still like just freely having sex before marriage, you know what I mean? And, you know, these dudes ain't thinking about being my husband, never. And, you know, I'm like, at least be engaged to this man. You know, you get to a point. I just feel like my value is too high now to have some dude humping on me that he ain't trying to put no ring on me. He don't have no thoughts about marrying me, you know, or just trying to do things the proper way, you know. That's just me. A lot of people, you know, oppose that. A lot of people are like, ain't no way. I have dated guys, y'all, that literally dismiss themselves from the table, you know, when I said that I ain't believe in sex before marriage. And some stay. I've dated men for years. Like literally, I was in a relationship with somebody for 2 years and we didn't practice, you know, sex before marriage. And, you know, we loved each other a lot. You know, I don't know what he was doing, but, you know, seemed like he was on the up and up. But, when you start walking this walk and, you get into, you don't have to be no minister for that. If you believe, if you a Bible believer, you don't have to be no pastor or no minister for you to have to live a certain way. And while nobody perfect and people don't change overnight, it's just you should be able to see yourself moving in the right direction. If you got things in your life that control you or bad habits and things like that, it's best to look back at last year and say, I'm doing better this year. If you just stand stagnant and you just in the same place and it ain't no efforts on you trying to do better, or when you out here living your life, you not thinking nothing about God and what he think, then you on your own. You know what I mean? And I realized that, like, when I move the way I move now, I can look up and say, God, I'm trying to do this how you asking me to do this. So I'm looking for your hand in this. You see what I'm saying? I can hold God to his word because I'm doing my part. And I think one thing that broke my heart, in the last year, more than anything, was like seeing where you can fall. You can make a mistake and you can see how it affects the people that's looking at you. Like, the worst thing in the world is for you to be found not credible of your word and what you teach. Like, this didn't happen, but this is just an example. Like, I teach the teen class before the pandemic. I'm teaching the teens every Sunday, right? I'm telling them things. I'm dealing with kids that got all kind of things going on. These kids having sex with multiple people. They doing drugs. They doing this. They doing that. The last thing I want to, hear is them saying, on road, I heard this and that, or my brother said this and that, he was sleeping with you or this and that, so it come a time when if you feel like you want to be a teacher or you trying to instill good things in people, like, you got to live that behind closed doors. And even if you're not perfect, be integral. Like, have some damn integrity. Some people just don't give a damn what they do, how they move, and that just ain't me. It's not that I get some family members that say, bro, don't worry about what people think about you. Well, that's just not my story. Like, it's a lot of people that looked at me for counsel and direction, and it does matter. It is a sacrifice. It is. I can't do certain things I used to do no more, or it will discredit me. It will, and sometimes I do. I'm going to be honest. Sometimes I do want to go to the club and turn up and just have a night. You know what I mean? But I can't move like that no more. You just got to kind of make the sacrifices that's necessary with the platforms that you have told God yes to. It's like you can't. Some people say, well, you can still have fun, road, this and that. Yeah, but my version of fun just gotta be different now. It's what come with it. And I'm nowhere near where these people are, but you see a lot of people on global platforms, and you see a lot of people now having to say sorry for things they said on national TV, or you got people with stories coming out about what they've been doing in the dark and things like that. And, you gotta live it. You gotta do right. Gotta do right. All right. What's another question? What time is it? All right. We got a little bit of time. What is another question that a lot of people ask me? Okay. A lot of people that work on my salon teams, they always ask me why I'm so tight on security. Like, anybody that knows me knows that I don't play around with security. Like, if I'm going in a spot to tape or film, or if I'm going out the back door late at night, at the salons and things like that, I don't even like stopping at the gas station at night because of some of the things I used to see, when I was kind of, in the streets, or even from the areas that I grew up in. But one story that I always tell people to let them know why I'm so tight on security is an incident that took place around Christmas. And I wasn't even around Christmas years ago. I was working in another person's salon, barbershop, and I didn't have my own. I was just going out the back door. At that point, I had a vehicle, and I think I had been working there for years, and I always went out that back door at the same time. Same parking space every night. I worked about 7 days a week, and it was a back parking lot. The guys used to always tell me, they say, "Bro, you need to park around the front," because I was normally the first one there and the last one to leave. And it was Christmas Eve one year, and once again, I was fried. I had went out on my lunch break and was smoking and drinking. But I finished my last client. She went out the front door and I locked the door behind her. And I was about to go out the back door. So God, it was loud in my head. Don't go out the back door. It was just like, you know how something tell you something. It's like, don't go out that back door. And I wasn't stupid enough to go out the back door. So I walked out. I felt weird though, but I walked out the front door and came around the front of the building. And if I had gone out the back door, the way the back door would open, I wouldn't have been able to see anybody standing behind the door, you know? And when I went around the front, it was two guys in masks. See, the way you went around the front, you could see straight back because the back door wasn't open. Whoever it was knew me because they knew I did that every night. They knew that back door was going to open at some point. So I walked around the front and I could see two dudes masked up with pistols out. And if I had gone out that back door, it was a wooded area right there. It was the dumpster and it was a wooded area right there. So if I had gone out the back door, I'm certain that they ain't had plans for me that was good. They was definitely going to probably take me in them woods. They probably was going to rape me and take all that Christmas money. And who knows? Because anytime where I come from, you know, when you put on masks, you know what I'm saying? It's a good possibility people try and get rid of you. You know, who knows what they was going to do. But so now when I talk to people that, you know, work in my locations and things like that, and I let them know, you know, try to do your Cash App or things like that, because it's sad, but you just never know, you know, who's watching you. And that kind of set the tone for why I'm so big on security. You know, that's not even the only time that people tried to get at me, but I just never played with it. And it's like when you learn lessons or God show you things through a lesson, I have learned to apply that to my life, you know, like make a change and be wiser. So now if it's that late at night, I'm either walking out with my last client or I'm gonna have the guys, you know, come and walk me to my vehicle. You know what I'm saying? And it's funny because you don't know till you know. The guys used to tell me all the time, Ro, don't go out that back door by yourself. Pull that car around front. But I was hard-headed. I ain't fear nothing. And now I see young stylists and things like that. And, you know, I tell them things like that and they don't listen. I look on the cameras and sometimes people still do it their own way, you know, and it's just a bad situation. But that's the answer to that. That's one of many reasons why I'm so tight on security. What's another question? And I'm not going to keep y'all on here all night tonight. What is another question that people ask me that is really, really good? Okay. Because I know everybody like to talk about love and relationships. I get a lot of people to ask me, like I said, about my dating life. And a lot of people lately have been asking me, how do I feel about dating somebody that's have different beliefs than I do, like dating a Muslim, you know? And I'm going to be honest with you. I tried that when I was younger. I dated a Muslim guy. Didn't make no sense. Like, it didn't make no sense. Y'all starting off going in different directions. it's not that, I have something against people, that believe what they believe, but it's not what I believe. So as far as me and my household is concerned, you already starting off divided, and I even get people that come to me, for counseling and things like that. And they ask, what are my thoughts on that? And I just feel like you need to be on one accord right there. Relationships are serious, and a lot of times people that want to get married, they want to have children. What is that going to look like for the holidays? I've seen it happen. It can work, but it's a lot of division right there. For me, I wouldn't marry a Muslim. You know what I mean? Like, that's just not something I would do. I would rather date a man that had the same faith as I do, so that we can sit together for Christmas. We can celebrate things together. We're going in the same direction. So that's that. Now, like I said, that's me. But, I have seen people do it. And I have seen, what it has the potential to do to children. They very confused and torn a lot of the time. On Christmas, the Muslim parent doesn't want to celebrate, but the other parent want to put up the Christmas tree and go to their family's house for dinner. So it's a separation right there. I'm all about togetherness and connectedness, especially when it comes to your romantic relationships or marriages. That's that. What's another question that people ask me that is really good? Oh, Lord. Yeah. I ain't gonna touch that one. That's tight right there. Let me see. Some people do ask me, this is a good one. They ask me, do I feel like, look at Kevin. What's up, Kevin? I don't even want to know why Kevin got big eyes on there. I don't even want to know. But I know that in the salon, I move around pretty swiftly. A lot of times I believe that I teach in my salons, make the most out your time. If you cutting somebody's hair with my barbers and my stylists, if you are cutting somebody's hair and you running your mouth, or you taking an hour to do a cut that could take 15 or 20 minutes, I feel like you're doing your client an injustice. And that's how the salon started off, with the name of Salon Rolls, ROLLS. Because a lot of my clients, especially my celebrity clients, if they come in or they fly in, a lot of times we are on time, and sometimes they came to me not because I'm the best stylist in the DMV. They came because they knew if they came, I was going to be on time and that I was going to have them in and out, and it was going to look good. So I teach that, even in hair school, people would say things like, you moving too fast and you doing, if I'm moving and it's still an accurate style, I'm still getting my job done, then to me, that's wiser. When I started doing hair, I had eviction notices on my door. I had to get that thing going. I needed that money. So I didn't have no time to play. I already told you where my mind was at. I knew where I was trying to go. I didn't want to be found slipping or getting put out my place. I ain't had nobody to call and say, can I get some money? The only option would be to call up some dude, some sugar daddy or some guy, and have him around so I could get money. And I just never liked that. So that's really like the root of why I started moving so fast with doing hair. And it just became like a part of me. And in my salons, that's something that we are known for. That's how I like it to run. I don't like people in my salon lollygagging and running your mouth and sitting around gossiping. And we in here to do our job, And when people come to us, they come in for us to listen to them. They don't want to hear about our problems all day. Sometimes over the years, you do get clients that's cool and that thing can be reciprocated. But overall, I can tell you there's no customer that's going to say, I don't mind her taking an extra hour because, she's sitting down. Even the customers that say it's okay inside, nobody want to deal with that. Be professional, get your job done. So that's that. That's why I move. It's not like I'm in a contest trying to be the fastest hairstylist in the DMV. No, I'm trying to make the most money I can make when my feet hit this floor. And the more people that I can have in my chair per day, that's the more people I can reach, or the more people that can come in here and pour into me. You know what I mean? So that's me. That everybody not like that. I know some stylists that do one client a day. That's suitable. What's up, Gary? Tania Owens. Hey, Tania, what's up? I love sitting in your chair. You are always on time. She said, no, you are the best, sis. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. That's one of my head clients right there. But yeah, that's a question that I get a lot. Why are you moving so fast? Because I got money to make and I got other stuff to do when I leave here today. What's another question? I'm going to do one more question and then I'm going to shut it down for the night. What is another question? A good question. And if anybody on the line got a question, y'all better drop that thing now or call in now because I'm about to shut her down. Okay, a lot of people ask me what my nationality is. When I was coming up, people always call me white girl. I'm gonna be honest, I never liked that. Because it wasn't nobody white where I came from, and that was real interesting growing up. Oh, thanks, Miss Pope. How you doing? Yeah, growing up, it wasn't no white people where I was at, for real. I really can't even remember one white person that lived on my block or went to my school. Like, I was probably the most pale child in my school. And my mother, this is funny. My mother was actually a dark-skinned woman. My mother was dark. So when people would see my mother and I together, and she would say, "That's my daughter," I remember people wouldn't even believe it. Like, people would laugh. They'd be like, "This is not your daughter," because we look alike, but we just different complexions. But my dad was white. I never met him. The father that raised me was black. I kind of had a Moses story. So my mom didn't raise me. She kept me until I was like 4. She was very successful. And when crack hit the scene, I really don't think anybody knew it was about to have the kind of effect that it had. I think people thought it might have been like another weed or something, So when she started smoking crack, that addiction got real. And she kind of fell off and she never really recovered. But her ex-boyfriend, shut up, Gary. Gary said you was really light. And that's so funny, man. Gary, that's so funny. But my mom's ex-boyfriend, / friend, they was just real close or whatever. I think he thought that I was going to be his child. He was with her throughout the pregnancy and stuff. And when I came out, I guess he was like, that ain't mine, because both of them were dark skinned. But he loved my mother enough and he loved me enough to raise me. He didn't have children of his own. She would start leaving me at daycare and he just picked me up and he raised me. He raised me by himself, even though I was not his child. And throughout my whole life, I never saw him date nobody or anything. So when people, say I'm spoiled and things like that, I can be, I didn't have everything I wanted, but what he could give me, he gave me all he had, he gave me everything. So that was like the story. And I did not know racism is something that's taught because I lived it. I never thought about the fact that both of my parents were dark-skinned until I was 14 years old. It never even crossed my mind that my father was not my real father. I wouldn't know. I just didn't think about it because that's how tight he and I were. Like, I never, ever, ever thought about both of my parents being dark skinned. And when they told me that when he died when I was 14. My father died of AIDS. So when he died and they told me that, I was just like, oh. And that's, I teach that to my young people now. Racism is taught. It is. Like, love overcomes that. Like, you really don't think about it unless somebody puts that in your mind. Yeah, like, that's real right there. But hey, Tawana, how are you, family? It's good to see you. Yep. And that's one of my people on my father's side right there. So she know that's the truth. But you guys, that's all the questions that I can really cover for tonight. And I just want to say that I appreciate everybody that tunes into the show. You know, the shows, they are growing tremendously. The impact and the connections that I made because of the show, you know, I'm just so grateful for. You know, it's just like, it's a good thing, you know, and it feel good to see people come on camera and tell their story. And, you know, the show is nothing. It's not about me. When people come on this show and they tell their stories out loud, when they leave out of here, they say, bro, I feel better. They say, and sometimes people come on here and say things to y'all and myself that they've never told anybody. And just for people to trust me like that, you know, I just appreciate that. And it's just a good feeling. So that's another reason why the show continues. That's another reason why I do it. You know, it gives people a place, and that's healing. When you can come somewhere and get a secret off your chest that you've been holding, and it turns into something that helps other people to heal and realize they're not the only ones going through it. That's what it's about. That's what it's about. But I want to thank you guys for joining me for another episode of Let's Talk with Ro. And next week, I want you guys to join me right here. We're going to have a special episode with a man that is a husband and a father. And he made a lot of sacrifices and changes in his life, and feels at times that Black men doing good in their households are very unappreciated. So see me here next week, 7 o'clock, for that show, Unappreciated. Have a good night.